Ooh. Hi, welcome everyone. And we're going to start in just a minute. If you want, while you're waiting, it'd be really lovely if anybody wants to introduce themselves in the chat. Just say who you are, where you are, if you're in what part of the country, or even what country you're in, and anything that you are, where you're studying or where you're working. It'd be lovely to hear from you. So yes, I can see the numbers shooting up. So we've got really good turnout. We'll just kick off in just a minute. So what's the weather like over in the States, Sadé?
At the moment, do you know what, it's getting used to. Obviously the sun shines all day, but it's quite weird because it's like it rises, it's like the same weather like all day long, and then it goes down really early and then it's just darkness. So it's weird. It's really sunny right now. Basically all day. Okay. It's sunny, except for a couple of days ago there was like rain all day, which is really unusual. Like everyone was like, oh, this is so nice. I was like, no, it's not. It's
no, exactly. We don't want rain.
Yeah, but it was quite nice, I guess, to have a little bit of a break. But it's weird as well because it's like the sun's out all day, so if you're standing in the sun it's really hot, but if you then move into any shady parts of like anywhere, it's actually quite chilly. So it's kind of weird because then you're like standing in the sun, you're hot, but then as soon as you go into the shade, it's actually a bit like you need a hoodie. So, but which I like. I think that's the perfect weather for me, to be honest. So
yeah,
I'm not complaining.
Excellent. Okay, well look, I think we're going to kick off now. So welcome to everyone in the audience. It's really lovely to have you all here for our October, I was about to say November, but not quite, our October Masterclass this year. And we are going to be focusing on the world of music. Just to say, if anybody we're going to be live tweeting, or the recording will be available after today. But if you want to tag us in anything, please do. We're on @_creative access on Twitter and on Instagram. If you have any questions during the event, during the workshop, please use the Q&A function, not the chat function, and we'll pick them up, and please feel free to upvote questions from each other as well. But as I said, I'm really, really thrilled to have you all here. This is a really special masterclass for me, actually, because we've got our 3 attendees are all part of the Creative Access community and all former trainees. So it's really lovely to have everyone back and seeing quite how phenomenally you're all excelling and reaching amazing leadership positions, which is exactly what we're aiming to achieve. So Kyle, who's a brand partnership coordinator at Warner Music, and the wonderful Kamilla, who is one of our very, very first trainees back in a TV production company must have been about 2013, and is now like a multimedia guru, journalist, DJ, TV producer, all sorts of things. And the wonderful Sadé, who we placed, I want to say, was it Sony? It was Relentless, wasn't it? Yeah, exactly. So, and is now also a superstar, jet-setting music industries. I don't even know what else to call you, but you're all wonderful, and we're really excited to have you here. So I'm going to stop talking and hand over to Kyle, who is chairing today. Kyle, thank you so much for your time. If you want to give a quick intro, that would be wonderful, and then hand on to the others. And I look forward to seeing you all in about half an hour.
No worries. Thank you, Josie, for handing it over. Yeah, I'm Kyle. I got my first ever job from Creative Access in, when was it, 2018, straight out of uni. And so it was at Warner Music in the brand partnerships division. So so straight out of uni, brand partnerships. I didn't even know what it was when I first got the job, but I just knew I wanted to work in music, so I was trying to get in there in any way possible. So now I've been here for 3 years in December, which is really cool. Like, I'm really enjoying it. It's cool, although the pandemic has kind of messed things up, but it's getting better. About my job, we don't really work in a label. We work in like Inc. and like international. We work with brands, external brands, and the labels to try and connect artists that they need for different campaigns or for product placement or for performances. So we're kind of like an agency within the labels, trying to connect brands with particular artists. It's really cool. We get to go on music shoots, music video shoots, photo shoots. We get to work on creative briefs as well. So working with external brands to make something tailor fitted for a particular artist. Loads of crazy stuff. We've worked on Ed Sheeran and Hines. I've worked with 1-800 Tequila and Koji Radical. We've worked on that brief. Loads of performances, loads of product placements in video. So when you see beats in a video, or you'll see like a phone, that's what I kind of do. So yeah, other than that, I have other interests like film and stuff. I did law at uni, and I know some of you put in questions about how you can transition from like not having no musical background and trying to get into the music industry. So I can talk about that later on. But yeah, that's me in a nutshell, basically. I'd like to pass it on to Kamilla to give a brief introduction about herself.
Great, thanks, Kyle. Hi, everyone. My name's Kamilla, and I am a radio presenter, DJ, journalist, and producer as well, working across like radio, like audio, I say now, because obviously radio is also podcasts, and TV. And yeah, like kind of without going like, the full long story, but as Josie said, my first sort of like, step into the sort of media industry was when I graduated. So it was definitely 2012. And I think I was just really lucky. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I didn't know what, I studied English at uni, and I saw this advert, and it was for a TV production trainee or intern. And it was a really great 6-month contract at a production company called 24. And that was literally my first sort of paid role in any sort of media industry. Before that, I'd done a lot of like summer schemes at places like Roundhouse. But yeah, the internship with 24 was really what just taught me the inner workings of how like a media company works. So like the importance of networking, like, meeting someone, and even down the line, like one of my first production managers who I met at 24, I went to her wedding like a couple of years ago. So that's, yeah, literally what, how my relationship with Creative Access come about. And then getting to where I am now, it has literally just been a case of like doing a lot of unpaid work, especially in terms of journalism, but in terms of TV as well. Like, I think I've been quite lucky to be able to move across into audio production as well, because I really enjoyed radio. So I've done a lot of shows at community radio stations such as Represent and Foundation FM, kind of alongside like my sort of paid jobs as well. And that kind of has led me to where I'm at now, which is I do a show on Capital. So on Capital at the moment, covering Marvin Hume, someone every day, 10 p.m. to 1 a.m. And yeah, like that's the sort of the main thing. But that's a condensed version, because if I listed every single place, I'd probably forget some. But that's basically where I started, a brief middle, and the current, I'm not going to say end, but the current situation.
So now going on to the last panelist, Sadé.
Thank you. Yeah, I think the same. I'll try and, where it's like, it's so long, but I'll keep it brief. So my background, I actually grew up in Scotland. I moved to London, definitely knew I wanted to work in the creative industries, didn't know what I wanted to do. So I ended up studying at City University, but we were very fortunate to do our degree in partnership with the Roundhouse, because originally I wanted to do events and festivals. So I went to uni, I kind of thought, oh yeah, like I've done all this work experience. During that time, I was interning at like all different places in London, actually, like talent agencies, venues, events, all these different things. So I thought, oh, by the time I leave uni, I'll be able to get a job. And obviously I came out of uni, it wasn't as easy as I thought. And then I came across Creative Access and I applied for an internship. So that was my very first like industry job, where it was, paid. I was in a corporate environment. So my first internship was with Sony Relentless. And I was there for about 3.5 years. So my background was in music. And I guess during that time, I was also kind of always working on like side projects. So DJing, like I had friends who were photographers and all these different things. So we kind of built like a bit of a network. And so I was doing things outside of it, started running events. My boss at the time, who ran Relentless, also ran the Notting Hill Arts Club. So I was kind of splitting my time between that. So I was kind of doing label stuff and then events at the same time. As that progressed, eventually I ended up leaving and working at Warner Music for 1.5 years. So I was a product manager at Warner. And then during that time, I also started running a business with my friend called Cozy, which was in the beginning an events company. But as we both kind of developed in our careers, it kind of shifted and changed. And now it's much more a production company where we do music videos and creative strategy and creative for artists. So I ended up leaving Warner. And then I joined Twigs's management team. So I worked on her project for 1.5 years. And then I left that in January, and I've just been focusing on Cozy, which is a business I run with my friend. So that's kind of like the history of starting in music and now working a lot in like production, working with brands, but still doing music videos and creative consultancy for artists. But yeah, essentially it kind of has evolved as my career's evolved and kind of shifted and changed, also as I guess the industries have changed too. But that's the brief synopsis, I guess, of what I've done.
Cool. So yeah, let's get stuck in. First question. So like to both of you, what was your first role, your first way into the music industry? And if there were any, what were the initial barriers to trying to get a foothold in the industry?
Yeah. Do you want to go first?
You go first.
Okay. I think that was my biggest thing. Like when I was at uni, I chose my degree because there was a lot of work experience. And I always thought, like, coming from a creative background, like my parents were musicians, they worked in music. I always understood that, a lot of creative things, you have to do it. But at the same time, I was like, okay, I'm going to do this degree, work at the Roundhouse, do these events, do all these internships so that when I leave uni, I can get a job in music. I left uni and it was just impossible. And I think the balance was that it was a lot of internships where they were unpaid. So I was doing a lot of internships while working a job, but realizing actually when you're at the entry level, it's quite difficult if you live in London to kind of like survive on entry level while you're kind of doing something creative. So I literally creative access, like I was very much at the end of like it. I spent 1 year basically looking for a job after I left uni. And it was either that I didn't have enough experience for the roles where they were paying like, money that I could survive on in London. And then the other roles were like entry level. So they were very much internships where you weren't really getting paid. It was more like, you might get paid expenses. So I spent a long time trying to figure out how to kind of like get a job that was going to get my foot in the door. And I think that's probably the biggest challenge is like, I moved to London, didn't know anyone, was trying to make connections, like meet people, but I didn't have the experience to get straight into the industry. So creative access was literally the turning point of that. Like I was at the end of like, I'd applied for all these jobs, wasn't getting them. And I was like, okay, at some point I'm going to have to figure out if I want to stay in London, how I make that financially, make sense. And then creative access allowed me to have a job, to get my foot in the door. But that's what I realized, I guess, is like actually getting a job where you can kind of like survive, build your career and all those things. If you don't have those connections, if you don't know anyone, if you come into a new environment, is actually really, really difficult. So I would say that's probably and I'm sure it still probably is, like getting your foot in the door where you can actually make enough money and, be working towards a career that you really, really want. So I think that was for me the biggest challenge of like coming out of university and having the reality check of like, oh, I'm not just going to be able to get a job just because I've interned here, or, I had to really work on like using connections that I had. It's not that many, but as many as I could, to sort of say like, I'm looking for a job, like if you know anything, if you can help me get my foot in that door, which was kind of how it happened. So yeah, I think that was probably the biggest challenge is about like, if you move somewhere, or if you're not from an industry or you don't have those ins already, it can be really difficult and lonely to kind of figure that out on your own, I think sometimes.
Well, yeah, so just like put yourself out there as much as possible. I liked what you said about like you got to do creative stuff as well, because like
Yeah.
that
Yeah,
really like
especially like if you are a creative person, I think, sometimes it's hard to go into those traditional environments and just like fit straight in, because you come from a space where work on the door at, like, I used to work at XOY on the Nest when they were like really popular, and I used to do the door there, and then I would do like my day job, and that's where I started to really learn, okay, if I want to work in these environments, it's actually about me making as many connections in all these different areas of the creative industry, because you never know where you're going to end up. So it's like I started in clubs, but that's actually what got me my job at Sony, because at the time dance music was very popular, so it was very like club culture. So it was good that I had a background in working at nightclubs already. So I think that really like opened my eyes to like, okay, it's all about building the networks as well as having like the educational background and the skills to do something.
cool, for sure. Kamilla, I'll pass on to you. How was your first how was your path getting to your first role, and like any initial barriers?
Yeah, I'm kind of like gonna focus it on like music side of it, because otherwise it'll go a bit complicated. But essentially, like I was working like in TV, and I've always enjoyed music, listening to music, and I kind of just felt, okay, I like the skills I'm picking up here, but it's not necessarily exactly what I want to be doing. So I think where I was quite lucky was, and I think like Sadé kind of touched on it, like you have to kind of balance up, like, oh, can I like live in London, pay my bills? I'm lucky because I'm from London, but I still have to pay bills, and also be able to do the creative outlet stuff as well. So I spent a lot of my time in community radio, and that was Represent Radio. I did a show there for about 4 years, and that kind of, I feel like that kind of gave me the insight into the music industry, that I wasn't able to get from being in a corporate like production company. As much as I enjoyed working on TV shows, it wasn't necessarily the content I wanted to make. So doing like the volunteer show and Represent, and also kind of contributing to a lot of publications as well. So this was a couple of years ago when people actually still read blogs, but I used to kind of like blog for MTV, had a blog called, I can't even remember what it's called now, but they used to have a blog and a few other sites as well. So I used to always like write articles for these places, and that would include like interviewing music artists, and that then showed me again, a lot of like the label life. So going to record labels and understanding what a press day is, understanding when, an artist is going around and they're speaking to 10 different radio stations, and you need to sort of make sure your questions are a little bit different. So that was how, I didn't have one set job, which was my first job. I feel like I very much did a lot of volunteer roles while I was like kind of had a paid job in the industry. And then I kind of got to a point where I saw a job advertised at BBC Radio 1 Extra, and it was in radio. And I'd never worked in radio production before, but I had kind of self-taught a lot of myself, from doing the volunteer show, how to edit audio, how to put together a show. And I think paired with this production skills I've got in TV, they were really impressed by it, and I kind of got I got the role at 1 Extra, which was it's a bank role essentially. So it's like you're part of a pool of freelance assistant producers they would use to work on different shows. But I think that was then the pivotal moment where I was able to kind of take the leap across from being in TV and kind of having radio as something I wasn't paid to do, something I volunteered at doing, and then I was able to get like a paid role in it. But it did take a while, because there was a lot of times where I'd get frustrated that I'd have to like stop doing my radio show, and I wouldn't be able to write articles because of the production job I'm on. Is like, it sounds amazing, but I have to go to Austria for a while or go to Spain, and I'm like, yeah, but I want to go to Represent and do my play out the interviews I've just spent like all weekend editing. But no, I think being able to do those things like simultaneously together really, really helped me kind of get that sort of first paid role in the industry.
Cool. Yeah. Talking about radio, we've had like a couple questions in from people before this show. Sorry if I'm saying this wrong, but Cocoa, spelled with a K. She got in touch and wanted to know, like, how did you get to your particular presenting style, methodology? So yeah, I don't know if you could just talk about that. Like did you look at other people and try and take different bits? Did you say, look, okay, I'm just doing it, I'm just gonna do what I want to do, and yeah, and just that presenting style, how did you get there?
I think it just it's taken a long time. At first, I went into radio because I just liked music. I wanted to be more of a specialist presenter, so play all the tunes I liked, maybe do a little bit of talking, but all I wanted to do is play the music. But then I think as I got more confident kind of speaking, I was like, actually I quite like playing music that I might not be too much of a fan of, but I'm enjoying talking to people and like engaging with the listeners and stuff. So it's taken a lot of trial and error and being able to have the opportunity to be on different stations. So somewhere like Represent, where you've got a lot of freedom and you can, you've given a show and it's like, yep, that's for 2 hours. That is what you want to do. You can make it as niche or as kind of, broad as you want. And I think that helped me with my presenting style. And then from, I think it was 2018 to last year, I had a daily show on Foundation FM, and that's a female-led community radio station based in Peckham, South London. And again, that was a really great experience because doing a show once a week, they always say this thing in radio called like air miles, like it's quite hard to build up your skills as a presenter, like if you're just doing one show a week, but if you're able to do that every day, you learn a lot more about yourself. Like it's like you accelerate very quickly. So doing a daily show, that's I think when I realized that I prefer doing less niche music and doing more kind of like commercial daytime radio, opposed to like spending like all my time on SoundCloud finding like all these like random like music which I still love listening to, but I can't able to do that every day for a radio show. So I would definitely say if you're trying to figure out your style as a presenter, like listen to a lot of radio and also like try different things. Like if you have the opportunity to do a radio show, try doing a niche show where you're mainly focused on the music and you're talking about the music, but also do like more of a daytime show where you could be talking about a random article you've seen or a random viral Instagram post and the music secondary to that. So that's what I would say how you can figure out.
Cool. Yeah, that makes complete sense. Yeah, it's just like I play a bit of football, so it's just like that, just like practice.
Yeah, basically.
You know what I'm saying? So yeah, I'm gonna throw it over to you, Sadé. Kirsty also got in touch before this, and she wanted to know in particular about your FKA projects and working with her.
Yeah.
But I just want to make it more wider than that. So like, what are the key elements of projects like the Magdalene project in like terms of its release and success? So like, what's your method in working on projects like that?
Okay, yeah. So I guess a couple of things. One is like the artist's vision. I guess let me start with like, Twigs is an amazing artist who already had such a strong like creative identity. So like me coming into the management team, again, I guess working with different artists across like different genres, when I moved into management and an artist like Twigs, I'd actually never worked with anyone like her before. So it was actually really interesting for me to see how like different creatives work. I think with Twigs, what I realized also is that she's a very disciplined artist. Like, she's obviously also a dancer, a creative, a musician. So the way that she kind of like thinks and approaches her creative is very different, I guess, from a lot of artists that I'd worked with before. So that was one thing. I think having, a very strong creative identity as the artist themselves. So it makes it a lot easier when you come in as management to understand it, because they can kind of articulate it in a way that it makes sense to me and to everyone else. I think another big thing is the team. So I came into the management team. So I guess how I ended up working with Twigs is when I left Warner, I was freelance, and me and Neela, who I run Cozy with, Neela worked at Excel, so she'd already had a relationship with Twigs. We then started working in the same office as Twigs and her production company. Not her production company, a production company who worked with her a lot. So I was just around it. So I kind of got to see a lot of how they talked and worked and, you know, thought about those processes. So I joined the team and I realized, you know, she had a manager, her main manager, who she's worked with from the very beginning. And again, I guess having that trusting relationship between management and the artist is also very important because, you know, outside of once, you know, she's made the music and everything else, it's like management's job to then communicate that to everyone else. So label, brand partners, agents, you know, everyone. So I guess it's very important that the team you're working with really understand the artist, who they're working with, and what the main goal is. I guess also, you know, again, people put out music all the time, but at that particular time, Twigs hadn't put out music in quite a while. So there was a very strong, like, I guess, vision of what we wanted to do with the album. So again, it made it a lot easier. And then, yeah, the process was very, very interesting. Like, it was very interesting in the sense that coming into that job, with an artist like Twigs, it was just interesting where every brand, every, you know, the Spotifys, the Apples, they all really wanted to work with Twigs. So it was just an interesting dynamic where I guess when you're in a label setting where Warner, Sony, you know, you have lots of artists. And obviously I was coming in from a marketing perspective, but on the management side, it was still very like clear to see that, you know, she's created such a strong identity that all these brands want to work with her because of that creative. So it just meant that, you know, we were able to come up with these amazing ideas and actually execute them because people trusted that she was going to make something really, really great. So I think a lot of it was actually a learning experience for me. And also, I guess, being on the management side rather than the label side was also very different because I was now involved in like every element of that album. So everything from like touring, you know, how we present it, the social rollouts, like that all came from us. So it was actually really amazing to see it from the side of a management team, outside of like the label perspective. But then because I had the insight from the label perspective, it made it also kind of even better because I knew the expectations that the label might have or the things that they would need in order to make the album, you know, run smoothly. So I think overall, it was just a really interesting process of like understanding that, you know, team is really important. The people you work with, super important, because whatever the vision is, you have to trust that, you know, when Twigs isn't standing in the room, that we're going to be able to portray, you know, what she wants to say or what the message is for her album or the music or the creative in a way that, you know, is still representative of her as an artist. And I guess that kind of, you know, is across the board on any artist that you work with. It's really important, I guess, that you have people who understand your vision, people that care about what you're doing, and then also, you know, having great work and just working really hard. Like, she works really hard. So it made me realize, okay, if this person is working that hard on what they do, I have to equally be as invested in that to make sure we all get the end result that, you know, we want.
And that, I'm not gonna lie, this is like personal. That end result was amazing. It should have won all the awards in what I think it came out like end of 2019. All the awards in 2020. Cellophane Song of the Decade. But it was sick.
Even I was just like, because I came on, they had already made Cellophane when I joined the team, and I was just like, okay, this is going to be exciting. It definitely was, yeah, for sure.
So pissed I didn't get tickets. But anyway, we move. Next question for both of you actually. During the length of your careers, what have you implemented to like ensure you stood out from the competition or just like people in general to make sure you could keep on climbing that ladder? So to Kamilla.
I don't know. I think that's quite a hard one because I think one of like my, I guess maybe I'll say what some of my regrets are. And I think the main thing for me is maybe missed networking opportunities, which I think when you're like in the creative industry, like whether it's music or any sort of creative industry, I think one of the most important things is networking. So I do kind of wish that I'd been a bit more active in keeping up lines of communication with people I've worked with at different companies. And I think that is something that, you know, people should implement to stand out from other people. So whether that is, you know, especially like in a lot of these jobs you might do, you might be on, if you're on a shoot, especially whether it is even like a music video or like a longer shoot, everyone at the end of the shoot goes their own separate ways. So you might work with a director, you might work with a camera op, and you're like, oh my God, like sick. But if you don't like exchange details, then you're not going to have built that that line of communication, because they could come into a job later down the line where they're like, oh my gosh, like we really need, I don't know, a music manager for this show, or we need someone like this, and you could have been a perfect fit for it. But because that line of communication isn't there, it might hinder you a little bit more. So I would say that is something that I wish I implemented to stand out a bit more. But overall, there's not anything that I actively, that was quite a hard question. It's not something I actively at the moment do. I am trying to get better at, I did a shoot last week and I made sure that I got like everyone's details. It was with Amazon, and I was doing some presenting. So I made sure I was like, okay, let me grab everyone's details. You know, even if it's just social, if you don't want to do email, I think that is quite a good way to sort of stand out, just so you can kind of keep the dialogue there, and you can kind of, you know, be kept in mind for future jobs, especially when you're freelance. Everything's down to like who you know, what, you know, one producer might be going on to something else, and you could just be at the right place at the right time. So I would definitely say like one thing to stand out is kind of being quite active and intentional with contacts you make. I think that's really important.
That makes a lot of sense. To be fair, what was you gonna say?
Oh no, I was like, yeah, agreed.
Yeah, same, agreed.
It's hard.
Yeah.
It's so hard. Like, but early on, I would always be like I remember I'd work with someone, like even I think it was at a camera op, and I'd be like, oh my gosh, like the kind of shows they work on, I want to work on that, but I didn't know why I wouldn't get their email, and then afterwards you're kind of like trawling through like emails you might be CC'd in to find their contacts. So you think this is so silly, like they're human, like you could have just said, oh hey, like let's stay in touch. So yeah, I would definitely say that's a good way if you're going to stand out is keep lines of dialogue open and be intentional with it as well.
Yeah, definitely. And I know because of your experience and you like freelance and you're talking about that makes a lot of sense. When I read the question, because I've never freelanced, so I read it as like, how can I stand out on paper, on like CVs?
Yeah, that might have been like that. I think especially because I'm freelance, I'm always thinking at the moment of, you know, next sort of voiceover role, or like obviously I'm lucky because I've got a fixed radio show, but just other projects as well. So I think it's something I keep in the back of my mind that, you know, like what's next.
I know I'm the host, but I just want to input quickly on the CV bit. Never freelance, only like sent job applications, stuff like that. So for me, like coming from uni, I did law. So completely removed from music, creative, all of that. Got to the third year, I'm like, I don't want to do this. So I took what I could kind of link to music to make myself stand out, because I was thinking in my head, maybe like I'm sure there's not a lot of people that did law that want to apply to like music roles or roles within that industry. So I did IP, intellectual property. So I talked about copyright, trademark, the stuff that was going in the EU, like when we were in the EU, all of that, to like show that although I've done this, all this stuff I've learned is transferable. Like it's not just like I just like love law and want to, you know, go Canary Wharf with my shiny suit. Like that's not it anymore. I'm trying to transfer over to here, and I can show you that. So for anybody that was thinking about like CVs, just hone in on something very particular to you. Even if you don't think it's that relevant, you can make anything relevant.
And especially on the CV subject, have different. I always have different CVs for different, like especially before I was doing more presenting, different focus CVs for different things. Don't rely on like a generic CV. I would definitely say like, you know, if you're going to apply for a you know, like a music sort of manager role, like definitely like have a CV that's very much targeted towards that, and like I think like you said, Carl, like put in, you know, relevant information that shows your skills are transferable.
And cover letters, please, people, do not send template cover letters. it's not the one. I've been caught out before.
Yeah.
It's not the one. But yeah, Sadé, so
I
do you
think,
have anything else to
the
add?
same question.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
wait, what's the question again?
So standing out.
Standing
I
out.
was just going to say, I guess, yeah, like from a creative perspective as well, for me, what I found is always like, if you are a creative person, always having those things simultaneously. Like say, you know, I was working at Warner, but I was still learning to DJ, putting on events, like doing other things where it's like, okay, my job is, you know, something that hopefully is going to be on my CV and show that, you know, I can hold down a job and, you know, do it really well. But I thought for me, that's what I realized. I was at Warner, but I ran a creative agency, which was really small, just with my friends, like, but we got really lucky to do a couple of jobs with like Nike and Converse. So that, but I noticed that whenever people would approach me, it was because of those projects rather than the job I was actually doing. So that kind of made me realize the more I have going on, whether or not it's DJing, doing a photo shoot, I don't know, like working with an artist outside of Warner that maybe people haven't really heard of yet, those were always the things that people would then approach me and say, oh, I saw that you like shot this thing, or I saw that you worked with this person, because a lot of it also is people speaking, you know, and if they see that you're doing good work, that's going to make you stand out, where they're like, oh, you have a job, but you also do X, Y, and Z, which I think I realized quite early on. I always made sure that, you know, again, part of it was just a creative outlet. Like learning to DJ was partly because I ran events and I realized like if a DJ doesn't turn up and I don't know how to DJ, it's not a great look. So, you know, part of it was like necessity of like, okay, I don't have that much money, so if someone doesn't turn up, I have to just be able to do this. But in turn, I realized I actually enjoy playing music. I actually enjoy meeting people through different ways of like being a creative person. So I also think that is like, if you're someone who is exploring like different things in the creative world, those things all like link together to help you stand out, I guess, because people understand that you have all these different assets, like facets of what you do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. Definitely. Next question. Yeah, for both of you again. This time is from audience questions or pre-questions, or well, pre the event. Tom and Nicole wanted to know, what do you guys think is the best way for new artists, like fresh, to reach a bigger audience? And is this only possible with people getting help from other people, or even getting attention from a label, getting signed? Do you think you can do it by yourself?
I'll let you go first.
Okay. I think definitely possible to build your audience without a label. I think it's such a difficult one. I think part of it is like what you want out of it. Like obviously every artist wants to be big, every artist wants to build an audience, every artist, you know, wants to do big shows. But I think it's about setting like realistic goals and milestones of like, you know, being consistent. I guess thinking of it from a different perspective of like, the end goal is obviously that you build a big fan base and you have as many people in the world listen to your music as possible. But if you're just starting out, it's about setting those goals of like, okay, being consistent about releasing music, understanding your own creative process and like who you want to be as an artist, and then setting smaller goals like, okay, let's do a show at the Old Blue Lost for 200 people, or, you know, setting things that are realistic of like, it's a process. You know, I think social media allows people to have an audience straight away, but it's still like building your own fan base is about understanding like what you want your fans to experience, what you want the audience to take away from the music that you're making. And then naturally you will find those people who really care. And I think part of it is being consistent, you know, building a team, which again is easier said than done. Like I'm saying it, but I know it's not always easy to find a manager and find an agent and all these people, but starting where you can. So say, for example, it's like community radio, making sure when you release music, you send it to those people, making sure you build relationships with people that work in areas, whether or not it's one promoter, whether or not it's, I don't know, someone who works, you know, in press, finding those specific people and, you know, letting it happen organically. I think sometimes because of social media and, you know, some artists put a song on TikTok and it blows up and they have 10 million fans, great. But if you want to have a long spanning career, you know, it takes time to develop those things. It takes time to build an audience. It takes time. So I think a lot of it is about being consistent and just, you know, taking your time, finding those key people, whether or not, as I said, it's community radio or places where it's like you're building it from a point where it feels genuine. It is actually because they really like your music and they want to champion you because they care about you as an artist. So I would say, you know, sometimes it's easy to focus on like how you make it really big, but I think a lot of it is actually like starting small and building those blocks out. And then eventually, you know, you might put that one song up and then it's huge on social media or on Spotify, but actually then you feel more prepared because you have a manager or you have people who you know actually are doing it because they already knew that you were an artist, not just because now they've heard it have 10 million views on YouTube. So I would say like try and take the focus into like, it's about having 10 people who really care about your music and will ride for you and pay for every single show you put on, buy your merch. And then from there, you can figure out how you widen that audience, I would say.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Like every time I see like people like blow up instantly, like 10 million views or whatever.
Because it's really hard when it happens that way.
Yeah,
then
like,
you
I
have
don't
so
think
much
I would want
pressure.
that.
Yeah.
Because like you're fresh out of, I don't know, you could still be in school. And then people want you to
and it's
perform
like as a person, you know, like if that's it, I guess a lot of artists, they grow as they grow as people. So, you know, you have to give yourself time, especially if you're young, to actually grow into like who you are as an artist as well as a person too.
Yeah, for sure, definitely. Kamilla, any thoughts?
I think just echoing what Sadé was saying, I think from my experience as someone who like I get sent a lot of artist music, the artists which stand out to me are those who've, I know it sounds a bit mad, have done their research. So it sounds really, really basic, but they're getting in touch with you because they know the radio show, the show you might have, even though it is a very small show on a community station, the music is your sound would fit on that show. So I definitely think it's like, you know, as an artist, knowing the sort of audience you're trying to attract, not just kind of like spamming every DJ's folder, spamming every like journalist folder and being like, hey, check out my song or play my song. I think that's really important. And I think one thing I've noticed recently is I think it's a lot of artists obviously rely on Instagram to kind of like, you know, get yourself out there. And I think that's great. But I think that we saw a few weeks ago when, you know, Instagram was down, that you could have like 10,000 followers, but it doesn't actually mean those 10,000 people are going to like listen to your music. So I think actually getting people's data, like information, is super important to like build your own like mailing list, because I think then it sounds a bit old school, but I think that's a really good way of actually connecting with people who like really actively want to hear you, and those are the people who are going to ride for you. So even if it is 100 solid people, you know that you could do a show and those 100 people are going to come, and if you've got the right venue, you've technically sold out the venue. Like you could still say on Instagram, sold out show. Do you know what I mean? It's sold out. I didn't specify the amount. So I definitely would say like just really like, I think Charlie said as well, but just really like keeping those fans, and like, especially like people who are like maybe tastemakers, journalists, DJs, presenters, like target the right ones. So one of my friends, she DJs a lot of house music, but people always send her hip hop, and she's like, she always is on Instagram like, guys, like I know like I'm black, what you don't just have to send me don't just send me hip hop, like if you listen to my show, you'll know I play house. And I think that's just really important. So just knowing who you're reaching out to, and definitely like keeping a fan base by like starting a mailing list. I would 100% say that, because if your Instagram gets hacked or it goes down again, then where are those 10,000 people don't know where you are or what you're doing.
Even I was surprised, like when I started at Warner, like labels were still talking about maybe in my head, I'm like, who signs up to mailing list now anyway? But certain artists do get like a sizable chunk of people on there, like signing up on their websites and stuff.
I think as well, because it's like if you're touring, like when I was working with Twigs, it's like you then have a direct connection to those fans. So it's like Instagram, but if you have a mailing list and we're saying, okay, these tickets go on sale at this time, people are getting that right into their inbox and waiting for that moment. So I think, yeah, people do still underestimate the value of like having those details, because you're directly reaching those fans when you send out those mail outs. And so even if 50% don't read it, 50% do, if you have 10,000 people on there, it's still like a great way to reach your fans.
Yeah, instead of spending all this money and just like
send
it to everybody that listens to like pop music or hip hop, you send it to people that really do listen.
Exactly.
Does make sense. Wary of time. Okay, two kind of like concluding questions to both of you. Mm-hmm. What does the next 5 years hold for both of you? Like, where do you want to progress to? Or I don't know. Should I ask? I don't know if asking what your goals are is personal, but if you don't want to talk about it, that's cool. And then how would you like to see the industry change for the better in the next 5 years?
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know who wants to go first. I think. Yeah, I know that. I know it's a bit of a heavy two-part.
Do you know what? I think for me, it's easier because I'm in America right now. So I guess for me, like I left Twigs in January of 2020. Yeah, that's when I sort of left that job. Then I went full into running my business with Neela. And again, like, you know, we've been very, very fortunate, I guess, over the pandemic to actually be able to grow our business during that time. So I think for us, it's about like even being here, like bigger opportunities, working with bigger brands and being able to like connect all those networks. It's like we've done loads of stuff in London. We're now in America, but because of the pandemic, which has allowed people to work remotely, we can still hire people who work in London. Like the person who we're working with on a project is based in New York. Neela was in LA, I was in London, but we were still able to like secure these jobs and work on them. And so I think for me and us, that is the plan over the next 5 years, is like us coming here as, you know, native UK people. It's about, you know, not only just saying, okay, I'm going to come to America, make loads of money myself. It's like, how do we build these networks where other people can have these opportunities to come here, fly to New York, do jobs there, do jobs in London, and actually like continue, I guess, to be able to work with our peers and our friends. Because I think from what I said at the start, like for me coming to London, not knowing anyone, it was so hard to get a foot in the door. So I'm very much like, you know, if we have a business where we can bring other young creatives and photographers and directors and, you know, artists and continue to work with them, that's always what I think our plan is to do. And I think that kind of like feeds into what I think needs to change in the industry, is like making it more accessible. I mean, this whole thing is like, that's the whole point, is like making it accessible for people who aren't maybe have connections or their family work in music or, you know, whatever it is, where they can actually find it achievable to like have a job also where you can survive in London. Do you know what I mean? It's like coming there, not being from there. Luckily, I did actually have my mum there. So I'm like, if she didn't live there, it would have been impossible for me to stay in London just because it's so expensive. So I think part of it is making it accessible to people who don't come from backgrounds where they already have money, and being able to give them a foot in the door where, you know, it's great to learn on the job, but sometimes you need guidance to allow you to not make some mistakes that you probably wouldn't make if you had a bit more guidance. So yeah, I think that to keep it short.
I'm going to cut in there now. I mean, I'm back. I could listen to you all for ages. You're all genuinely, this is absolutely fascinating. One very quick thing I want to say is you've talked quite a lot about financial accessibility, and just to flag to everyone that we've actually just launched a bursary fund yesterday where we're giving away financial grants to people who are facing obstacles to entering or progressing in the creative industries with McLaren. So if anybody is interested, feel free to head to our website. We're giving away grants of 250, 500, and £1,000. So I recognise that we did a survey last week and we found of nearly 2,000 people, and over 77% of people have said that they can't apply for awards due to financial barriers. So it's such a live issue. But I'm going to stop talking, and we've got tons of questions here, and I apologise in advance if we can't answer them all. There's some really fantastic questions here. James has asked, and I'm not going to ask the same questions to all of you, but just jump in quickly. Do you know of any industry networking events for someone who's looking to break in? Who wants to take that? Any suggestions?
I don't know of any. like event. Oh, yeah.
Good stuff.
I mean, I know, I think, because I've got a platform called The Bring In, which is kind of all about, bringing the next sort of gen into more radio, TV and sort of like podcasts as well. And I know another presenter, Ramel London, she has a platform called The Mainstream as well. And they do like, live actual networking events. But I think the only thing is the pandemic has really shifted networking like very much virtual, which has been a shame. So I'm just looking forward to next year, like finding loads more, being able to do like the Bring In person and seeing some more kind of in-person networking events, because they've all seemed to have gone virtual at the moment.
They have, but you should also be following people on social media, like check out, I think that's a really good way to connect. Okay, next question from Elias. Do you know of anyone in the music industry do you know of any people who worked in the music industry and then became artists and musicians, or people who do both? If so, how do they balance it all?
Yeah.
I know. Oh.
No, go on.
Yeah, I know one guy that used to work in Atlantic, and like he raps, but he doesn't really, but he does. And he also runs like how do I describe, like a creative agency type thing? So, and to be fair, he does work really hard. Like I'll see him at 9 and he'll be talking about like how he got in at like 4 a.m. So it's crazy, but he feels like when I see him, like he really enjoys, like this is like him, like this is his passion. So if it's your passion, then you don't really work, do you? So
that's a really good, you're leading that. I mean, that's a very good answer. And in fact, I'm going to ask Sadé, because I can see you want to answer that, but I'm going to incorporate the next question too, which is from Francesca, which is, how do you balance side projects with the work and social life?
That's what I was actually going to say. I think balance is the hardest thing. And I think when you're a creative person, that's always going to be a challenge, because you always have those elements of like, you need a job to make money. You want to follow your dreams and your passions. I think it's about, to be honest, I think we're all always trying to figure that out still. I think, it's all individual, but I do think that, you try and get, I always thought, okay, I'll try and get a job in whatever I do that is going to allow me to progress in the other things I want to do. So that was my balance, where I was like, if I work at Warner, I'm learning the structure of a corporate world. I'm learning all these things that I can then apply to my own business. So even though I was working basically 24 hours a day, I knew that it was for a focused period of time. So again, I guess like planning. So if you plan, then you can balance it better, because okay, for 2 years, I'm going to be working like consistently for 24 hours, but I know at the end of that, it's going to benefit me in 3-4 years when I want to run my own business, because I have all this insight and all these connections. So I think that's how I made it make sense in my head.
That's a good answer. Thank you. So Rochelle's given us a question, which quite a lot of people have upvoted, which is, what's your view about representation and diversity in the music industry? Anyone want to take that? Or do you have a view? How does it impact?
I do. Like working in the building, I don't really work for a label, but working in the building, initially it felt like all they really wanted to hear from Black people was like about hip hop and stuff. It felt like that was the only thing you could, like Kamilla was saying about her friend. Her friend does house. Like, why are you sending me hip hop? Like, it feels like that's what all we can like contribute, when there's loads of people making rock, house, all sorts, pop, all sorts of stuff. So I think that has to kind of change, but I don't think it's going to change now, because UK rap is like #1 right now. Yeah. But that's all people know. Like even mum knows what drill is, which is crazy. So I think in the climate right now, I don't think that's going to change. So, but hopefully it will. Hopefully we'll get a bigger Black acts that are just not like UK rap, like we might get like opera singers or whatever. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So So right now I'm not so hopeful, but hopeful for the future.
I don't know. Maybe I'm someone I would love to see like in the future, just more. And I think we're slowly seeing it, like you said, Carl, because at the moment one of the most popular genres is like drill, rap, hip hop, UK hip hop, are a lot more senior Black and people of color behind the scenes. So it's not always being the front and center, but actually behind the scenes and at senior levels as well. So not just at entry levels, but you know, people who are at those senior levels, the ones who are able to make decisions in companies. And I think that is for me, that's the most important thing I'd love to see kind of change. And I think hopefully it's slowly starting to change, but I think just at those senior levels is what I would love to see, more diversity out.
Totally agree with you, Kamilla. Yeah, completely. Well, that'll be you guys soon. But Sadé, question for you here from Aman saying, how do you get clients for your business? Because it's such a saturated industry.
Yeah, that is a great question. I think from all the conversation that we had, you know, to be honest, a lot of it is network. Like a lot of the jobs that I get are from people who have either heard what I've done or seen what I've done. And again, I know it sounds easy to say, but that really is, you know, and even like observing, you know, when I was in these industries of music and the corporate world and the labels, it was all connections. Like people would move around from, you know, people would have a job at Warner and then they would move to Universal, where, you know, you would think, oh, they would never move from, because, you know, when they're at Warner, they're like, yeah, Warner's the best label. And then 2 years later, they're working at Universal because their, you know, CEO has decided to move and they really like them. And, you know, they end up taking their artists with them. So a lot of it is like those personal connections where it's like, if you trust someone and you want to work with them and you believe in them, you're going to move with them, whether or not they're at Warner or Universal or Sony. So actually building those really solid relationships, and especially when you're at the beginning of your career, because there's so many people that now who I started off with who were working at community radio or starting off as a DJ that now have shows on Capital Extra or are, you know, head of A&R at this label. So I think understanding that your network can also be people who are your peers, because they are also developing their career. So I think network is really a strong thing, and building things with your network of people, because that will help you in the long run, I think.
I love that. I think, you know, that's totally the ethos that we aspire to, and having those connections, and, you know, it's just completely, you know, at the heart of what we're trying to do here at Creative Access. I'm very conscious of the time. We've got 3 minutes left. I've got one quick question from Federica, which is, how do you keep creating excitement, a sort of buzz in creating content for your audience? Is it useful to have a target audience in mind?
I think just because I started off, and just because it's in my head of like, I'm making a lot of content now. And I think that is always like, you have to make content that you like, that you care about, because I think especially now where like everyone, whether or not you're an artist, a photographer, whatever, you're making content. So it has to be things that you're passionate about, because that comes through no matter what kind of artist you are. So I think that's what I would say to keep the buzz, because it's like, you have to be excited to go out and talk to people about it 2 years later, even though you made it yourself, you know? So I think that would be my main thing, is like, if you're excited and if your friends and the people around you are like, this is amazing, other people are going to feel that when you speak about it.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. There's a few, I'm really sorry, I'm not going to be able to take any more questions. I'm going to kind of try and summarize all the remaining questions into one question, which is really about how do you kind of get experience and get insight and get work experience? And what's your advice for kind of entering a big company or small company? Like, just a final top tip from any of you about entering the industry. If you could suggest one thing to people, what's a practical tip? So if any of you want to start, I'm going to go around very quick, each of you quickly, and then we're going to wrap up.
I would just say, make sure you keep the contacts there. So grab the email address, grab their Instagram, grab the Twitter.
If you don't know them in the first place, that's the issue.
Oh, if you don't know them, I was fine.
So how do you start off from scratch?
Do a little bit of stalking, find them on LinkedIn, especially if you know that you're going to be in the same building as them. Find them on the global email address. So, you know, every big company has a global email address. Find them and send them a message. You know, hey, I've just started off in this division. I know you work in this other division. I know you're probably super busy. Can we go for a quick coffee, or a virtual coffee is now the new thing, right? But yeah, I would just reach out to them, find them on LinkedIn. Like, I've underestimated LinkedIn, but it's really good to find in actually specific roles and what people do.
Yeah, Kamilla, you've been a massive advocate of networking, so I'm going to definitely pin that on you. So thank you for that. Kyle, any other tips from you?
Just apply for everything. Like, I didn't know what brand partnerships was, and I saw it. And I thought, hey, I want to work in Warner. So just apply if you don't have anything yet. Because like me, I was like fresh out of uni, unemployed. I thought, yeah, like I'll do anything to get in there. And then once you're in there, you can find out if you like it or not, or you can transition. But get in the building, by whatever means, but not finance. Not like working in finance is dead, not finance. But by any
I'm
means.
not even sure I don't know, but I know there'll be people that disagree with you. That is sound advice. Thank you. And last but not least, Sadé, what's your top tip?
Yeah, to be honest, it kind of echoes the same things. I would say research. So as you said, like researching, like if you're going for an interview, if you're meeting anyone, do some research, because it is important to like walk in, and it makes you feel more confident because you kind of know, okay, I know what I'm kind of saying. And I think the second thing is the same, like just trying things, because I started off in Warner, now I work in content production, so it's always a journey. So I think definitely be open to trying things. It's not just like, if you want to do this one thing, if you don't get that job, you can't do it. So being open to like exploring different creative avenues to get to the end result, I think is important.
Yeah, and I think that idea that you've all actually spoken about quite a lot is being bespoke. Like, make sure your covering letters bespoke. Make sure that when you're approaching me for an idea on the show, that it's bespoke. So I think the research is really critical, and it shows that you've done your homework and you really care about it.
Yeah.
So look, we are so grateful to all three of you. You are just totally brilliant. It's like the best thing for me to see how incredible you are such role models. You're definitely the future of the music industry, all three of you. So thank you so much. Everyone else.
And thank Creative Access as well.
Yes.
Thank Creative Access.
Thank you. Thanks, Josie.
Just a quick flag before we head, which is our next masterclass, if any of you wants to come, is also with a fantastic panel of wonderful alumni, and it's going to be around the world of PR and marketing. So we've got guys that are working in-house at Viacom, which is MTV, and NBC Universal, and a couple of people, and at Sky. So we've got a lot of the broadcasters covered, and in agencies. So if you're interested in the world of marketing, communications, and PR, please do come along next time. And that's it. Make sure you follow us on social media. If you want to watch this in full, you'll be able to see it on our website on Monday. And thank you again, and have a lovely evening, everyone, and take care.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.